Well, hey everyone, this is Dr. Dan Grissom. I am an associate professor at Azusa Pacific University in the Department of Engineering and Computer Science. And in this video tutorial, I'm essentially going to show you a very basic but workable setup for your Git repository. This setup, I think, should work well if you're on a small team, maybe a group of 5 or 6, something like a senior design project, or maybe even in a kind of a small software development team. Probably wouldn't work very well if you're in a corporate environment, things like that. But the general configuration is kind of what you're going to see at other places. It'll just be much more complex. So I will say this video is assuming that you have gone through my earlier video where you are basically I show you how to set up a React Native environment and you create this demo project. So let's talk a little bit about branches and kind of give you a little bit of a quick lesson about what we're going to do before we actually set it up. Okay, so the basic idea is we're going to start off in GitHub and we're going to create a master branch. So when we literally just create a project, it'll create a master branch for this. And we're going to kind of consider this as our production branch. This is going to have all the code that we would feel comfortable releasing to the public. So if there's any code in there, it's basically code that we have packaged up and released to the public. From the master, we will branch off a dev branch, okay, so short for development branch. This is going to have the stable code that's going to have all the latest tested features, okay, so this is the best branch for developers to branch from. So, think about a team where you have multiple people, maybe even dozens of people working on different features. So essentially what happens is all the features that have made it through and tested well, they're eventually going to make it into this dev branch. So whenever you are creating your own feature, you're probably going to want to pull it from the dev branch, but we'll talk about that in just a second. From the dev branch, we are going to branch off a testing branch. Okay, now this will have the code attempting to be merged into the main branch. Okay, it's could often potentially have broken code, at least until any merge conflicts are fixed. Once the code in testing is working, then it's going to be eventually merged back into dev. We'll show that process in just a second. Okay, so, and then finally, and this is where these first 3, the black, blue, and red, the master, dev, and testing, are going to be created up front. Basically by a team leader or something like that. And then the green branch really represents potentially dozens, maybe even hundreds of branches for basically small tasks that developers are going to do. So again, this is just a convention, a suggestion. There's millions of different ways that you can do just about anything that I'm going to show you in this entire video. But one way that you might want to actually name the branches for your features is something like this. So epic name, and I'll talk about epic in just a second, but epic name / feature / some unique number with a feature description. Or if you're working on a bug fix, then epic name, bug fix, and then some unique number with some kind of bug description after it. And the slashes are important to have, and I'll show you later why that's really nice to have. But the main reason is for organization's sake. Now, epic name would be maybe you could look at this a lot of different ways, but really a feature or a task that I'm working on, maybe it's a part of a bigger thing. So maybe I'm doing a bunch of styling at the end of my app development. So I just do all the code up front, and then I have literally several weeks where all I'm doing is I'm doing styling. So you might come and have styling / feature / 489 - homepage styling or something like that, right? Or homepage button styling. Okay, so the idea is that this feature probably is going to belong to some kind of bigger feature, so to speak, or maybe a bigger component of your app. So that's the idea there. You could also do this team names, like if you were on maybe in a bigger environment where you actually had multiple teams working on the same project, then you might actually do it that way, where you have a team name, feature, and then kind of a feature description. Again, just a suggestion. But anyway, these green branches, this is going to likely have code from a single developer. At least, like I said, I'm recommending that for a small project of 5 to 6 people. Likely have code from a single developer focusing on a specific feature, bug fix, or task. And this is really just so the developer does not lose their code. Okay, so you can check in. This is kind of like your own temporary branch. So I hate losing code. I hate losing any of the work I've done, right? So I'm kind of obsessive compulsive about this. I would, I'll work for like an hour and I'll check it in, as long as it's my own branch. Now, if you're checking into a branch that's shared and people are often looking at, you don't want to be doing that because it's annoying, right? You're checking in something every hour and people are seeing that and they're feeling like they're constantly getting a little bit behind of where the branches that they're pulling from. So, like I said, you're going to pull off your own branch, and then that way you can check into it, you can commit things as often as possible, and then when you actually feel like you have completed this feature or really fixed this bug, what you want to do is essentially merge that into the testing branch. Okay, so we'll merge that feature or bug fix, spelled bug fix wrong, but we'll merge that code back into the testing to check for stability with the rest of the team's code. Okay, so this testing branch is going to have potentially code from your fellow teammates who have been testing other things as well. So typically you'll actually need to go ahead and kind of pull testing into your branch and make sure there's no issues, and then you put it up into testing. But essentially we're going to merge our stuff into testing. Once testing, we've found that it's essentially stable and it's not causing any errors, we can basically merge that into the dev branch. Okay, so once the code merges into testing stable, we'll merge it into the dev. We really shouldn't get any conflicts here. Now, typically, the person who writes this code is not the one who's doing these merges. They'll actually do like a pull request, and then typically like a team leader or your kind of lead developer is going to be the one who kind of reviews this code and basically says yes or no, yes, we can merge it back into dev. And eventually, when at least a subset of these features we've added into dev are stable and tested, we may eventually decide to move some of those into the master, or again, what we're calling our kind of production branch. So that's the basic flow that we're going to use, or at least I'm going to recommend as an idea. Not saying it's the best way or the ideal way. A lot of it depends on how you plan on running your project, but it's a decent way, and I think it'll do the job again for a fairly small project. And it'll kind of give you a little bit of separation, at least the amount that you would need on a project like this. So let's go ahead and get started. So again, I am assuming that you do have Git installed and kind of all the stuff to create a React Native project. Now, I'm going to go ahead and download a tool that I really like to use called SourceTree. Okay, now again, there's a million ways to do this. SourceTree is a GUI tool, and I like SourceTree because it has a Windows and a Mac version. GitHub actually has their own GUI tool. It used to be really bad. It used to be like really, really simplistic. I think they've maybe since fixed it, but I gave up on it before they kind of improved it a little bit. SourceTree has always been pretty good. I felt like it's always had the right amount, kind of right balance of simplicity and complexity. So I'm going to go ahead and download for Windows. You can also download it for Mac. Again, everything we're doing here though can be done in multiple ways and multiple different, you can use different GUI platforms. You can just use the command line, the Git command line interface completely. If you feel really comfortable with the Git command line interface, chances are you probably don't even need to watch this video. You probably know what you're doing already. But for the rest of us who maybe don't know what we're doing completely, or just like GUI tools so you don't have to remember tons of commands and things like that, then you can keep watching. Okay, so you can see I actually already kind of had it installed, so it's kind of loading up a few things. I'll go ahead and just kind of see if I can shut some of these. This is an older project. But once it's up and running, what we want to do is I can go to Tools and Options, and I typically go And you want to make sure that you set up in the general your full name and your email address. So whatever email address that you want to kind of mark your changes as coming from in name. Typically, you can use the same one from GitHub. But then go over to authentication, and I would encourage you to just add an account. So I'm going to go ahead and actually add my GitHub account because that's where we're going to be hosting all of our code. So it already fills in most of this, and I will go ahead and let's see if that actually works or not. It's probably going to ask me to log in. Apparently was already logged in, so it went ahead and figured it out for me. I'll hit OK, and you'll see it actually loads my username as well as my picture, so I know it worked. Perfect. So I'll hit OK. Okay, so that's most of what you need to set up. Again, do make sure that you type in your full name and email address here, because it will stop you at some point when you actually try to make a commit if you don't do these things and the authentication. Okay, so I'm actually going to just create a brand new project from scratch. So go ahead and open up my command prompt, and if you remember from the earlier video, I was did the wrong slash, but I was doing it in repos. Okay, so I just had that one directory demo project. Okay, so essentially what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and Expo, I think it was init, let's see, Expo init, and then I'm going to just call this something like real project. Okay, and then I'll go ahead and choose a blank one. All right, so we will wait while that installs new project. In the meantime, what I'm going to do is actually going to jump over into GitHub. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and just create a new repository. Okay, so I'm going to call this, essentially I want to call it the exact same thing that I just created this project, just to kind of, for consistency's sake. So I'll go ahead and copy that. And then for repository, real project. So you can give it a description, real project, simply to test out GitHub branching. Okay, so whatever you want, and I would recommend making it a private. If you are a student and you're watching this, you should be able to get free private accounts by basically signing up through GitHub has like a student. You should just type in GitHub student. They should have somewhere you can sign up to get a free account. And basically what that gives you is a few free private repositories. So you want to check private. I think it's GitHub Education. And I'm going to just leave it as is and going to create a repository. Okay, so you'll see if I just click on real project, it's going to just take me here, and there's really nothing in here. Okay, I haven't added anything, I've just created like a blank repository. Okay, so I'm going to minimize that and kind of leave it there. It looks like I'm still waiting for this project to finish installing, so I'm going to go ahead and pause for just a second while we wait for that. Okay, so it did finish. So what I really want to do now is I want to take this project that I just created. Okay, so I can go ahead, for instance, and let's just do Expo start to make sure that this project is up and running properly. Okay, so it, let's see. Oh, sorry. Okay, so I need to actually change directory into real project and then Expo start. Okay, I will also go ahead and open Genymotion. Again, I just want to make sure that the project installed properly. So go ahead and open the Pixel 3 emulator while the bundler is getting ready. go ahead and pause while we're waiting. Okay, so the emulator is up and running. I will now go ahead and try to run on the emulator. Hopefully it'll bring me up that, oops, I don't know why I brought that up. Stop remote debugging. Did that from an earlier video. So that should build properly. I'll go ahead in the meantime and also open up, well, it's not, VS Code. Oh, it's complaining about the debugger since I closed it. So let's just reload it without the debugger. Okay, so I'll open up Visual Studio Code and I will go ahead and open the folder of this new real project. Select folder. And wait for it to load. Perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to open up just app.js for now. And hopefully this shows up. Any second. So much fun. Save it, see if it can kick it in the motion here. Okay, let me just pause here and get this thing kind of cranking. Not really sure what's going on. Maybe I'll just try to reload the app one more time. There we go. Okay. So we are up and running. So again, the app works. I can update it. Great. Okay. So what I want to do now is at this point, I literally just have a folder with my project. It's not being tracked locally by Git or remotely by Git. Okay. So if I open up SourceTree and click the plus up here, basically it allows me to add some projects. So what I want to do, and I'm going to show you this actually isn't going to work at first, but I'm going to add, and then I'm going to go ahead and try to browse to my repos, real project, and I'm going to select it. And I click add, and I believe it's not going to like me. Oh, it does like me actually. Okay. So, I'm actually mildly surprised that worked. Okay, so cool. I was expecting to actually have to go and do a git init in there, but apparently I didn't. If it does complain at you and you do that real project, you might need to simply go open up a new command prompt. And navigate to that directory and then type in git init, and that'll basically initialize that directory as a Git directory. And we may need to do that still. We'll see what if SourceTree complains. Okay, but at this point, what I want to do is I want to just check in all of my files. Okay, so I'm literally going to stage everything except for, and basically what this is doing is, and one of the reasons I like using the GUI is it's just really easy to see what's actually changed, what files have changed, and what has changed in them. So let's go ahead and just stage everything to start off with. Okay, package.log is a little question why. Don't know. Sometimes I just ignore that. But I'll go ahead and just put everything in there. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and give it a comment. So initial check-in of starter React Native project. Okay. Now, if you look at the remote, basically this is showing a problem. It says you don't have any remotes. So basically, this project, if I try to commit it, I don't know what it'll do. It actually, okay, so it's actually going to commit it, but only on my local machine. So if I come over here on my master, it basically shows, hey, I did make this commit, initial check-in of starter React Native project. Okay, so then I could actually come to my code, and if I go to my working copy, if I come to my this master, if I come over to my code and I maybe make a change here and save it, now in source tree we should see when I click on working copy, it shows that, hey, there was a change to app.js, right? So then I want to go and type in something like changed text on home page to, or whatever, right? So I will need to stage that file and commit. But notice I cannot click push changes immediately too, because there's nothing to push it to. I have not actually set this local Git repository. I have not connected it to a remote repository. So I'm going to go ahead and just commit it. And so I am tracking changes locally, but if my computer blew up or something like that, I would still lose all my work. So what I need to do now is actually, you can do this a few different ways, but just go to settings and on remote. And I'm simply going to add, okay, I'm going to just do default remote, which is going to set it up to origin. Okay, for my URL path, I'm going to go back to GitHub. Oops. Wow, awesome. So I will go back to GitHub and to my Rail project. And you should see this HTTPS. Just literally click this button and it'll copy this address. And that's the address it's looking for. So I paste that and then make sure that you select your GitHub account, and this will kind of authenticate through that. So I'll go ahead and hit OK, and then I will hit OK again. Okay. So now at this point, okay, I should be able to actually push these changes, and it's going to basically tell me, hey, where should I do it? So I'll go ahead and push it to, so I need to select the master branch. Okay, so I should be able to now go and simply reload this page. And I do see now initial check-in of starter React Native project, change text on homepage on just the app.js. I can see commits. It actually is tracking those 2 commits that I made in my local repository. They're now up to date on the remote repository. Okay. Great. So just to show you one more, if I wanted to make one more change, I could go to hello real world. Save that. Okay, typically what you want to do is, again, I can click to select. You can see the differences over here. It shows you, hey, I get rid of this world, hello world, and now it's hello real world. And I'll just stage that file, and I will go ahead and a few different ways you can do this. You can go to the working copy, and you can commit it here. So updated home page text, and typically you just want to click this push button. That way, because usually when you're committing, especially on your local branch, if it's kind of your feature branch, then check that button, hit commit. It'll basically save the changes for you, but it'll also immediately push it to the remote server. So you'll see as soon as that's done, you can refresh this page, and now you see updated homepage text 12 seconds ago. Okay. All right, so basically what we have done is we have created this master branch, and we have checked an initial starter project into it. Okay, so what I want to do now is actually go ahead and create the dev branch and the testing branch, and maybe a feature branch as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. Okay, and there's a number of ways you can do this. You can do it through the command line interface. You can probably do it through source tree or some other GUI. I'm just going to do it through github.com. It's pretty intuitive to do. Okay, so I'm going to basically, again, if I just go to the home page for the branch or for the project, real project, literally I can just click this branch master and it will show me all the different branches, which is just master. So what I want to do is I want to create a dev branch. You can see create dev from master. So it's going to literally pull dev off of master. Okay. So now I have a dev branch and I want to do one more. I want to pull a testing branch off of dev. So I'll go ahead and do that. I will create testing and I will create that from dev. Okay. And I'm going to do one more. I'm going to do kind of one of these feature branches. Okay, so I will go ahead and create a new branch, and I will call this something like, let's say team 1. I'm just going to use a team name instead of a bigger epic feature name. So I'll just say team 1, and then I will say feature. I'm going to create a new feature, and then some number, unique number 001 dash home page button or something like that. Okay, so maybe I do something like that. Now, where should you get this number from? Number of different places. Let's say that you're using Trello, for instance. One good idea might be to actually, let's see, I'll just go into random board I have here, and I will create a new card, and maybe I'll call this, what did I call it over here? I said homepage button ad. So homepage button ad. So really you want to have a card with that same name. If you actually go into the card, if you go to share, there's actually a unique card number already attached to it. So you can use that. There's also power-ups where it'll add you can add like a number in the title itself automatically. So I'll just use that card number since I have it. So homepage button ad. Okay. So let's go ahead back to GitHub, and I'll go ahead and just do that. I think it was it 251? Perfect. Okay, so 251. And I want to actually make that not off of testing. So I'm actually going to kind of copy that, and I'm going to jump back to the dev branch, and I'm going to create this from the dev branch. So again, remember, I want to pull my feature from the dev because the dev is in theory the stable. I never want to pull from the testing because someone may be messing with that, trying to merge their code back in at this point. It may be broken. So again, we'll just go ahead and create that branch off the dev. Okay, so now I actually have 4 branches that you can see. These are all mine, obviously, but you'd be able to see other people's branches as well. You can also go to something like Insights and go to the network graph, and you can kind of see all these branches. Right now, they're all one and the same. They all have the exact same code in them. Okay, so at this point, I want to go back to my source tree, and you'll basically see branches, okay? And these are really, it would be better if it said local right here. These are the branches that I have on my local machine, okay? If I click on remote, you'll basically see all the branches that source tree sees. However, I haven't yet fetch the new ones. So if you want to basically go and see the changes that I just made, just click fetch up here, and it'll give you the option fetch from all remotes. If you click prune tracking branches no longer present, it basically will get rid of stuff that was removed on GitHub. Just click OK, and we should see these new branches pop up. So now you see dev, master, testing, and this is why this is the reason why I said to use the hierarchy with the slash, is because you can do nice little folding here, so you can see team 1, feature, things like that. So that way it'll really keep, because you may have literally dozens, hundreds of different branches, especially if you create a branch for every little feature or bug fix. So it's really nice to use the slash kind of hierarchy, because it'll really keep your repositories clean, and especially a program like SourceTree, which will actually fold these out nicely. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually, let's say at this point I'm the developer, right? And I just created this new feature branch, and I want to essentially check that out. Okay, so you can click checkout. I believe you can probably double click it as well, and it'll tell you the same thing. So if I check out, brings up the same screen. So I want to check out this remote branch basically to a local branch, and what that's going to do is it's going to move it from down here up to here. So now you can see I have a local version of this. Okay, so this is really nice because I can actually jump between different branches. So I can very easily, if I want to check out someone's branch on another team member's branch, I can easily look at their code as long as they've checked it into the repository, the remote repository, even if it's kind of like their own personal branch. So anyway, at this point, what we will see is this what I'm looking at right here is actually the code from this 251 homepage button add. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and add this button in. Okay, so what am I going to do? You'll see I'm going to have my package.json and app.js. First thing I want to do is in my command prompt, I'm in the real project, I'm going to go ahead and npm install React Native Elements -- save. Okay, so that'll install React Native Elements. Should add the code right here. Okay, and in the meantime, we'll see that should add it in a second, but in the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and start coding for that. So I will import button from React Native Elements. Okay, and then I will add a button here, button text, or I'm sorry, title. Awesome button. Okay, and then I will give it some icon like cached. Why not? Okay, now I'm gonna wait for this to complete before I save it. Again, I do have the emulator running. I will also get rid of the real world. Oops, I accidentally saved it. I couldn't resist. So I do have an error, and that's most likely because the npm install was not yet complete. It's still installing the React Native Elements, and yet I'm trying to use it right here. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of close the Expo app and wait for this to finish installing. Don't know how long it's going to take, so I'm going to pause and I'll be right back. Okay, so it looks like it did install, and I just want to point out, if I actually scroll up, you'll see the first time I tried to do this install, it actually gave me some weird errors, and that happens often with npm. Literally most of the time, if you literally just try again, literally type the same thing in and hit enter, a lot of times it works the second time. So don't be afraid if you see an error when you try to install something. Just try it a few times. If it doesn't work a few times, then you can start to get worried. Okay, but anyway, so now I have that package installed. I have the import and the code there, so I'll go ahead and save that, and I will go ahead and try to run this again. So I'll go to my packager. I'm just gonna stop it and restart it. So Expo start. Bring up a new page and let it kind of initialize, and then I will run on Android device emulator. hopefully we will see it loading up. Okay, doesn't like my cached or something. Just gonna try to reload one more time. Oops. In the meantime, I will, let's see. Expected. I'm missing something. You guys probably see it. I don't know. Oh no. Code. Oh, duh. I'm missing the name tag there. Key. Okay, so we'll stick with the code now. That should be good, but probably is in a weird state now. So I'm gonna go ahead and try a few things. I'll just try to rerun it, see if that gets it out of the funk. This is part of what you work with, by the way, with React Native, is little stuff like this, and learning to not get too scared when you see all of the red text and the red screens and things like that. So usually it looks a lot more scary than it actually is. If you kind of just pay close attention to things, you can usually figure things out. So I'm gonna go ahead and get rid of this and then try it maybe one more time. It is still not liking something. So let me go ahead and pause this. I'm going to figure out what's going on right here. Just simple code. It's not working. Okay, so I did fix it. If you actually rewind, you'll see that it was still complaining about that cached, or at least the code that it was seeing was broken had that cached icon in there, and I had changed it to code icon. So for some reason, it was still looking at the old code. I think it had to do with the switching of the repositories. But literally, I just went and restarted the packager, started it fresh, and everything looks good for now. So again, that's something you'll have to do often. I don't know. Looks like I have two things open here, which may be an issue as well. But anyway, so let's go ahead. And at this point, so I've added this button now. I should be able to go into something like source tree, and you can see some of the changes that we've made. If I look on, if I go up to uncommitted changes, you'll be able to see in app.js, there is the new import as well as the button and the change of the text. Package.json, it added React Native elements to it, and the package.lock, it just did some weird stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just grab the app.js and the package.json, and I'm going to stage those. I'm just going to honestly discard this package.lock, and I am going to go ahead and my working copy, I'm just going to go ahead, working copy is this 251 homepage. I'm going to go ahead and commit that. So added branch, or added button to homepage. Okay. So go ahead and commit that, and that's, again, it's checked, so it's going to push the changes immediately. Okay, so I should be able to now go into GitHub, again, just kind of refresh things, and I will see, actually, it's kind of telling me, hey, there was a change in this branch. Now I'm on the master, so if you look at app.js where we just made that change, it has a change from 19 minutes ago. So I do need to go and select this feature branch to actually see on the app.js the change that we just made 33 seconds ago of adding the button to the home page. Okay, so the neat thing now is I should be able to go back to source tree, and I'm going to go ahead and just check out the dev. Okay. Typically, you're never going to work with the master. This is something only really your team lead should be touching. Anyway, I should now be able to go in, and if I look at my code again, you'll see that my button is gone, and it's hello real world. Okay, so literally I can go back to source tree, and I can check out homepage, and you'll see that now it brings that button back. Okay, so again, I'm literally switching between two versions of the same code when I check out those different branches. So it's actually in essence updating the code in this this folder, at least the working copy. Again, remember the working copy of what I'm actually looking at in my editor. Okay, so that's really neat, kind of just to be aware of that again. So if you have multiple features, different people working on stuff, and you kind of want to take a peek at what someone else is working on, maybe they tell you, hey, I solved that problem, just take a look at my code, then you can easily do that. Again, just remember to fetch those changes, do a fetch to get like the most recent updates, and then you can go ahead and check out their branch from the remote into the local, and then check out the local branch, which will actually change the code on your local machine. Okay, so that's all fine and dandy. So let's go ahead and kind of finish this up now. Okay, so what have we done? We have created this feature branch, and we have checked that code in. Okay, so I'll go ahead and check it back out so I can see my latest code. What's really neat too is like just as far as like working with the simulator, you can literally so right now I have my button code in there. If I go back to source tree and I check out the dev version, for instance, you want to see, hey, what's this stuff supposed to be working like? Literally just check it out, and you'll actually see that Genymotion will automatically, it'll notice that the code changes, and it will automatically refresh the emulator to reflect the dev branch. Same thing if I switch back, right? I just double click, and you'll see that it refreshes, and it's going to bring that button back. So that's pretty cool. Okay, so what I now want to do is, let's say that this feature is done. Okay, it's been checked into GitHub. You can actually see when I literally just go to the homepage for Real Project, it tells me, hey, you recently pushed to this branch. Okay, so what I want to do, typically as a user, right? So if you've created your branch, you're just going to check in a few times. You're going to do your commits however many times you want. When you decide that you're done with your feature, you basically want to create a pull request. Okay, so just click that button, and I'm just going to kind of leave in the comment. It's kind of up to you what you want to do for your title, but I'm just going to say something like this: merge feature into not master, but I want to merge it into testing. Okay. Now, again, typically what you're going to want to do is, this is kind of a short way of doing this because my code hasn't changed in testing. Typically what you're going to want to do is pull testing into your local feature branch and make sure that it's working then, and then do the pull request, and that will basically kind of request to merge everything in the latest version of testing with what you're doing in your feature. So but anyway, I'm just gonna attempt to merge the feature into testing, and then I'll go ahead and do a pull request. Okay, so at this point you're more or less done as someone who's created the feature. You've created the pull request, and that's basically going to put a little tab. You can see in my project there's going to be a pull request tab, and really this is up to however you guys have your team set up, but your team leader at this point would then be looking at this kind of intersection right here to say, hey, does this code work, right? So at that point, I'm just going to go ahead, you would go ahead and try to attempt to use the branch, the feature branch, make sure it's working and testing things like that. If you were in a bigger project, you would have a bunch of automated testing. But I'm just going to go ahead as the quote-unquote lead developer and merge it. You can see that it already tells you this branch has no conflicts. As far as just code goes, Git kind of says, hey, this isn't a problem. I can merge this automatically. That doesn't mean you don't need to test it. There could be some logical issues with it, but code-wise, it shouldn't have a problem. So I'm just going to confirm the merge. Okay, and we should now be able to see that if we go into, let's see, do I need a comment? Don't think pull, yeah, okay, so that should go down to 0. Now you see there's one closed pull request and one open pull request. So now we should be able to go to the branches. If we look at our feature, again, you'll see what was the change. The last change was added button to the home page. We should also see that in testing as well when we look at app.js, added button to home page. We don't see that in the dev because we haven't pulled it up that far yet. We still see updated homepage text. Okay, so let's just jump back into source tree, and we would hope to see that in testing, right? So if I click on testing, and I'll go ahead and check out testing. Okay, what we actually see is just see added updated home, but then you'll actually see that it looks like there is something. This is basically showing you that there's code ahead of the code that you actually have. Okay, so typically what you want to do, you can do this as often as you feel compulsed to do so, is you want to click on the fetch. Okay, this is basically going to go out to the remote server and grab any changes that it can find. And what we should see essentially is that we are a little bit behind, right? The testing, we basically had the original version of testing, but there's actually been 2 commits that have been merged into testing that we don't quite have. Again, the bolded version is what you actually have on your local machine. So what we want to do is essentially grab these 2 changes, these 2 commits that we made in the home page and merged, or in our feature branch, and merged back into testing. How do we do that? We simply go ahead and click pull. Just click OK. And that way you can see the bolded branch, what we have is in fact the latest of everything. Okay, so that way you can see in my app.js, this is now the testing branch. It is actually up to date, I believe. What's really neat about Visual Studio Code is it actually has a lot of these features that you can actually see if you change something. I know it shows you what branch you're in. I'm just not super familiar with this, but this is actually a very kind of a very bare bones version of source tree, and what we're looking at, it'll show you some basic source control stuff. Okay, so if like what we see here, we do have the button. This is the testing branch. I can switch back over to the dev branch, and that should make the button disappear, right? Because the button was not yet merged into there. I can switch to the feature branch, and again, the button should return. And there it is. Okay. So what I want to do, the last thing I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and just merge testing back into dev. Let's say I've gone ahead, I run the code, I ran whatever automated tests I wanted to, or I've just kind of maybe in an ad hoc way ran the app with the new code, and it seems like it works, right? Whatever your testing methodology is. So the final thing I want to do is actually merge this back into dev to say that, hey, everything that's in testing, I'm now saying that it is up to date and it looks good, or it's stable and it looks good. So let's go ahead back to GitHub, and we will see now again testing pops up, right? Or we could just go, if we go to branches, we should be able to go to testing directly, and we'll see the a potential pull request. So I'm just going to say pull request. Okay, so attempting to merge testing into dev. Okay, testing seems stable, right? Whatever you want to put for your note. Okay, so again, I'm going to do a pull request. And again, this is something that typically at this level, it's probably just the lead developer that's doing this. So testing seems stable. And I'm just going to go ahead, since I'm kind of one and the same, I'm the only person working on this right now, I'm just going to go ahead and merge the pull request. Okay, again, you would have more of a process where you're actually reviewing your code. You're probably going to have some merge conflicts where it's going to show you some issues, and you're going to have to basically compare the code, and when you're merging your feature and the testing, for instance, you're going to have to compare the code that was in testing with the code that you're trying to check in. If it's significantly different, then Git won't know how to merge it, at least everywhere. Okay, so again, this pull request should be done, so I should be able to come back to source tree and do a fetch. And it should show that actually shows that master is out of date. Let's see, I want to make sure that we check that into, okay. So I actually think that I made a mistake here. Notice master is actually where I uploaded that. So I totally made a mistake. I merged it into the wrong place. Okay, so what I'm actually going to do, you can do this a few different ways. If I actually go to master, I can do things like reverse commit, right? To basically say, hey, I don't actually want to do this. And this may not work through source tree, but essentially I might want to actually go in and reverse that. I can probably go to commits here, merge pull request number 2. Actually, never actually undone a merge. So I'm not going to poke through it now, but if we poke around a little bit, we should be able to actually reverse this particular merge. But let's go ahead and do the right thing now. So I'm going to go ahead to my branches, and it was dev that I wanted. Okay, let's go back. I'm going to go to my testing branch. Okay. And then I'm going to do new pull request, and I want to put testing. You can see there's nothing to compare because I accidentally merged testing into master. And again, that's one reason why you really only want like one person who is very privileged to have access to master, because again, that's my production code. I essentially just released testing code that was tested, but maybe has some secret features, right? Development features that I don't yet want to release to the public into my public code. And if you have a really automated system, it may automatically take what's in your master branch and make it live. So again, I really just want to put it into dev. So you will see that there is some merges to do. So merging testing branch into dev. Okay, so I'll go ahead and create a pull request. go ahead and merge. Okay, so now we should see if I go ahead and fetch. Go ahead and pause for a second. All right, so now you do see that the dev comes up, and I can go ahead and pull those 3 commits into dev. And I should now see in my dev branch, the button will reappear because it's been merged basically up this chain from the feature into testing and into dev. Okay. Okay, so I do believe that I can, I'm just going to go ahead and try and revert these changes I did into the master real quickly. If I go back to github.com and I go to pull requests, I can look at the closed ones and see, I believe it was this one. If I click on it, it'll show me this is where I merged 2 commits into master from testing, which that was a mistake. Come down here, you should see revert. Basically, it's going to create a new pull request to revert the changes to what it was before. So revert, attempting to merge, testing into dev. So something like that. And I'll create a pull request. And of course, I need to then merge the pull request. Okay, so now hopefully when I go and look at the master branch, you can see it does show revert, but if I actually looked at that app.js, you would not see that button in there. So then I should, hopefully that should be reflected in source tree when I hit fetch. And you'll see it actually has 5. I'm going to do fetch one more time. Click that, but now it's 5. I added 2 because those 2 that were added were just basically unadded by a new. So if I do a pull on that, it's basically going to grab all those changes and essentially go back right where we started. Which is without the button, as you can see in our code. Okay, so the only other thing that I do want to show is if you actually, let's say that you didn't create any of these pages, you just wanted to basically get the project working on your machine. So how would we do that? Should be pretty straightforward. I'm just going to go to the project homepage and click the clone or download to get that link back up, and I'm going to go ahead and copy that link one more time. Okay, so what I want to do is in source tree, I want to just open up a new tab, and again, this is, you probably haven't done this, we created the project from scratch. This is the case where maybe you are a team member who is just really wanting to grab the repository that your team leader made. So I can just go ahead and just do a clone. I'll go ahead and paste the address in there. You'll see it's checking the source and found that it was legit. I'm going to go ahead and just, give it like real project 2, just to obviously kind of give it a different name. Actually, let me go ahead and what I will do is on the desktop, I will give it real project. And then I will hit clone there. Okay, so we should basically see all the same different branches. So if I wanted to grab the dev version, I would just go ahead and double click it to check it out. Okay, so dev should have in app.js the actual button there. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and there's my project. I'm going to go ahead and switch to the desktop real project. Okay, so there's my app.js. So you can see the code is there. And then I also, so one thing that's going to be true though is this real project is not going to have any of those node modules. So if I try to run it, it's not going to work because none of the React Native code is there. The React Native elements I installed is not there. So what I need to do at this point is I'm going to go ahead and just cancel my packager. Okay, and I'm going to navigate to this directory. Okay, so cd paste. Okay, and what I want to do is an npm install. So this is really important. If you're just pulling code from the repository for the first time, you're going to need to do npm install. And what that's going to do is it's going to go through the process of actually creating that node modules folder from scratch for you. And again, what that's doing is it's basically looking at this package.json file, and it's basically going out to the internet and grabbing all these different pieces of software and all the dependencies. And that's why it's so important that when you do add any packages, npm packages, that you add that --save tag to the end so that it'll add it to that package.json. So whenever someone else tries to run the code, they can literally just type npm install and it will do all those npm installs that you may have done individually one by one when you were just adding new features. So this will take a second. I'm going to go ahead and just kind of close the project up here while we're waiting. Don't think I need this anymore. And once this is done, we will go ahead and just demonstrate that it works. So I'm going to pause for a second. Okay, so it looks like the npm install is completed. So we should be able to now just say Expo start. That'll load the packager. Make sure you close any old packagers just to be safe. The bundler, I should say. Got my emulator up and running. Just give this a second. And now I'll go ahead and click run. Again, so you do need to just make sure you change into that new directory or whatever directory you just clone that code into. All right, and there we have it. And I'm going to be honest with you, it didn't actually work at first. It gave me some big nasty red errors on the page. And literally just usually, again, don't be intimidated when you see those errors. A lot of times you just have to restart stuff. So I literally just restarted. I actually went back and closed the bundler, and I did npm install again, and then I restarted the bundler, and then I restarted the app again. And magically it worked. So one of the lessons of React Native is if at first you don't succeed, definitely just restart as many things as possible, and many times that will do the trick for you. If that doesn't do the trick for you, then probably you really need to be looking at the code. Okay, so I know that was probably an incredibly long video, but hopefully seeing how you set things up will save you a lot of time and getting these branches set up and having a good understanding of kind of the general flow. Again, there's a million ways you can set up repositories in your branching structure. If something makes sense to you and your team, then really I encourage you to do that. But if you really have no clue where to start, this is a good place to start. And you're going to run into problems because what I did, right, it was very simple. I was just kind of merging into branches that I knew hadn't really changed. So you're going to get merge conflicts and things like that. and you can certainly work through those as you come to them. But again, this video tutorial hopefully gave you at least a good idea of how to start and a good kind of pattern to go with. All right, thanks a lot. Hope you have a great day. Thanks.